August 20th, 2014 was the day I decided that I was going to be done dealing with my pain and that I was going to take my own life. Growing up was pretty normal at the beginning. At 7 years old, my parents got divorced, and that was really life-altering for me. My dad was kind of physically distant. My mom was emotionally distant. That definitely had an impact of me, of just feelings of like, oh, is this my fault? And the thoughts of like, am I to blame? What did I do? Because it's not the same. So when I turned 13 is when I moved into my dad's and stepmom's, and there was a lot of like verbal, mental, emotional abuse during that period. During those years, I really started to develop an eating disorder. I became depressed. I started to struggle with like self-harm, developed suicidal thoughts for the first time. I had no terms or words to put to what I was feeling, what I was going through. So I never considered myself having depression. I never considered the fact that I was suicidal despite the fact that I wanted to die. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, Ashley, you're so stupid for like crying yourself to sleep or for doing these things. Your life is fine, you're great. And so it turned into self-hatred because I had no idea what mental illness was or what trauma was. I graduated high school. I moved out as soon as I turned 18. That first year was kind of just trying to figure out like how to do life and believing I'm doing it well and showing people that I'm doing it well, and yet continuing to crumble inside because I still felt horrible. And so during that year, I had my first suicide attempt, and depression and anxiety was just like crippling me to the point where I stopped functioning. At some point in early May of 2014 is when I reached my rock bottom. I had no more hope, and so I decided that I was going to end my life. And I picked the date August 20th because it was after my two little brothers' birthdays, but it was before my own birthday. I was like, I don't want to reach 21. I picked that date and I made my plan, and that was a Sunday evening. And my mentor was a professor at the college I went to at the time. And so I was in her office 2 days later, literally just doing homework. And we're not conversing about anything. It's such a God thing because she just looked at me and said the words, "Have you heard of Mercy Ministries?" That Friday night, there was an event at the home in Sacramento, at like art function that I got to go to and visit the home within a few days. And I started my application process, and I kind of just went through the motions. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll apply. I have nothing else, but I didn't want to go. I was waiting on my acceptance call, and I do what was called my second prayer to God. And I said, okay, fine. If I get into this program, I will actually go. And literally within 15 minutes, they called me and they're like, hey, you're accepted to the California home. They called me to say I was accepted sometime in June, but the day that they called me to say I was going to come into the home finally was August 19th, the day before my planned suicide date. And I look back at it now and say, God was saying, you know, when you think it's the end, I'll always be there one step ahead. Mercy is a Christian-based program. I was like, that's fine. I believe that there's God. That's great. And I quickly learned I was not really a Christian. And so for me, my first few months were honestly just learning about God, learning about the Bible, learning about the gospel. And so it was very foundational for me just in walking out a Christian life. And so on October 14th, 2014 is when I gave my life to Jesus. And I think that's when things kind of started to shift because I at least had the foundational for the healing and the freedom. And I remember a day we were out, and I just remember being done with the day, being like, ugh, I just want to go home. And this just light bulb went off in my head of like, oh, Mercy's my safe place. Like Mercy is where I feel loved. Mercy is where I feel safe. And Mercy's been the first place I can just like be who I am and feel completely accepted and completely loved and supported. And it was just such a huge experience for me to call it home and mean it. I mean, it's really intense to go from I want to kill myself on this date to being inside a safe home less than 2 weeks later to a month and a half later choosing to follow Jesus, which was the biggest pivot in my life. And when I left Mercy, seeing the huge turnaround and the extreme 180 in my life, it was just mind-boggling. I straight up don't think I'd be alive without mercy. I just know I want to constantly love people and disciple people and tell people about Jesus and what he's done in my life. So as long as I get to do those, I'm happy.